Okay, now I move on to my round 2 game from Eilat in Israel. In the first round, I lost this quite interesting game in the Dutch. I had the white pieces here. I was playing Fejzullah, whose rating is about 23-20. So quite important for me and the team to get a victory on the top board here, as this is one of the weaker teams and we could definitely beat this team, and also, of course, for my own self-confidence. So this was an interesting game. I've sort of been swapping with my openings now. When I play white, I tend to play e4, d4, c4, b3 quite a lot now to keep my opponents guessing on what move to play. Now, I thought I was in quite aggressive mood, so I thought I'd start with e4, which is generally meant to be slightly more aggressive than d4, even though the way I play d4 is very aggressive as well. My opponent played e5, and now I did my standard response to this, f4, the King's Gambit. And the King's Gambit has been a favourite opening of mine. It's not really seen at top level anymore. Most of my openings I play are not really played at the top, but I don't think this is a bad thing. And in this game, I got a good position very quickly, actually. Well, probably a winning position after something like 8 moves, which is not seen very often in chess nowadays. My opponent took the challenge up by capturing on f4, and now I play what I probably considered to be the best move, bishop to c4, the bishop King's Gambit. Knight to f3 is obviously the main way to play the King's Gambit, but there's more theory on this move, and I think Bobby Fischer found good ways of playing against this with the black pieces. But bishop to c4, I've had some great results of this, and it's an underrated move, I think. It really hasn't been catched upon by some of the top players, and it's got a lot to offer. There's lots of moves here, but my opponent played the counter-strike d5. Now this is a way to gain time, return a pawn sometimes, but go for quick development. Now bishop takes d5 is the main move. My opponent responded with knight to f6, and now knight to c3. And here my opponent played what I probably consider to be a slightly bad, odd move here. The main line goes bishop to b4, when we actually enter an endgame, which is probably slightly better for white after knight to f3, bishop takes c3, d takes to release my dark squared bishop, pawn to c6, bishop c4, and the queens come off, black castles, I capture on f4, and black captures on e4. And then white plays a move like rook to e1 here. And I'd say white's slightly better here due to the 2 bishops, open position, and slightly better development. But of course his pawn structure on the queen side is compromised as well, so it's not really a massive advantage, but it's a very playable position. And even when you play an opening like the King's Gambit, you have to be willing to enter endgames and positional lines. You can't just rely on attacking chess the whole time. But my opponent after knight c3 went for knight takes d5, and this does get rid of my strong bishop, but my knight takes up a very good place on a d5. My opponent now had a problem with the f4 pawn, and really only one good way to defend this, because if he goes something like bishop d6, I'll just continue with d4, and then I'm going to play e5 on my next move, and he's going to be in trouble. So instead, my opponent played g5. And this is a position I've never seen before or looked at, and I had a long think here, thinking of a number of interesting ideas. The move I played was my first instinct, but I got carried away with one very interesting line, which I'll show you now, which starts b3, and I was trying to make this work for quite a serious amount of time. The idea of going bishop to b2, so my opponent has to go bishop g7, and now bishop to a3. And this looked very interesting to me. I mean, my opponent certainly can't take on a1 here, because queen takes a1 would leave me in a winning position, because I'm threatening to take his rook and play the extremely strong knight to f6. So after bishop to a3, my whole idea of this, I'm trying to stop him playing the move c6, and again, if he played c6 here, I have the strong move bishop to e7. And the problem is, after something like queen to d7, I then go knight to f6 check, with a big advantage to me, because I gain control of this lovely diagonal. My dark square bishop is a complete monster. But the reason I didn't play this line was after bishop to a3, I thought my opponent could just play knight to c6. And then after something like knight to e2, again taking the rook's too dangerous here, bishop to e6, knight to c3. My opponent could play queen to d7 and castle queenside when he has great control of the d4 square and the e5 square, and he's at least equal here. So another move that I could have tried after g5 would have been d4. And I think this is probably one of the most sensible moves to play. But instead, I played queen to h5, the most aggressive move. And I spent most of my time looking at knight d7 here. The point behind is that he actually missed my threat in this position. And knight d7 has the idea of playing c6 on the next move, trying to kick my strong piece away on d5, a strong knight. And this is a very messy position after something like h4 here. And it's not clear what's going on. Now, my opponent played a mistake. He played a c6, completely missing the main point behind queen to h5. And now I just played knight takes f4. And I calculated that ensuring complications worked out quite well for me. On the pawn up, so he has to really take the challenge. He took here. Now queen to e5 check. Queen to e7. I take on h8. Queen takes e4 check. And this position may look a little bit dangerous to me, but I think I'm just doing very well here after my next move. I mean, king to d1 runs into bishop to g4 check, and king to f1 is a bad square for the king as well. But after king to f2, I had the simple plan of developing with knight to f3, rook e1, d4. This bishop on f8 could not move at all to c5 because it's pinned to the king, and this is a major point. My opponent thought he had to grab pawn on c2, and now I played knight to f3. And if my opponent continues with standard development like bishop to e6, I have a chance to go rook e1, knight d7, and then queen to c3. And this is a very important move because after something like bishop to c5 check, king to f1, I'm going to continue with d4 on my next move. And basically I'm just going to be exchange up. So my opponent tried quite an imaginative idea. He tried queen to c5 check, and after d4, queen to c2 check, bishop to d2. So he's lost a number of tempo, but he has stopped me trying to exchange queens at queen to c3. Standard development now continued. Bishop to e6. I kicked his queen, rook hc1, queen d3, and now my queen came back into the game. Queen e5, knight d7, queen takes f4, castles queenside. So I am the exchange up, and obviously I'm doing well, but it's still actually a rather messy position. My first fault here was that I didn't really want to allow him to put his knight onto d5 square, because if he gets his knight to this square, it's a very nice outpost, and he's definitely got compensation then. So my next couple of moves are aimed against this. Rook to c3, gaining tempo. Queen to b5. And now again, if I go something like rook to c1, he plays knight to b6 or something similar, and his knight reaches this very good square. So I continued in an aggressive way, pawn to a4, and I think this is a good move because I'm trying to, if he plays a quiet move, let's say queen to h5, then I'm able to play pawn to a5. And this has two good points. It stops knight to b6, and it threatens to go a6, destroying his pawn. So after a4, he has to take on b2, and now my rook on a1 comes to c1. And again, the main idea behind this is stopping knight b6, and I'd looked at the very complicated variation, knight to b6 here. But I saw I had a lovely little tactical exchange here with rook to c2. This is useful to play because it unpins my bishop on d2. Queen to b1, and now rook takes c6 check. And after pawn takes, rook takes, he has to really go king d7 because king b7, I go check and pick his rook up. So king to d7, and now I continue in aggressive fashion. Knight to e5 check. If king to e8, I have rook takes e6 with mate on my next move. So he has to go king to e7, and now I have the lovely check, queen to h4 check. And the point being behind this, I can take on h7 if he goes f6, so he has to move his king back. And now I continue with checks. Rook takes pawn check, pawn takes, queen to h5 check, king to e7, and now the lovely point behind my play, bishop to b4 check. And this leads to a winning position for me. You can see how important it was for me to unpin my bishop. The point being, after queen takes b4, knight to c6 check, wins too many pieces here, and his piece is going to be too weak in the final position, so I should have a winning position. So this was one very nice variation that stops him putting his positional plan into motion. So instead he played bishop to d5, and this is a good piece on d5. So now I decided to play queen to f5, which I think is a very nice move. Again, it's threatening to take on d7, and it's also pinning his knight, so I'm not allowing him to get his ideal setup. My opponent, who in time trouble, now crumbled quite quickly by playing bishop takes f3. And here I was able to play the intermezzo move, rook to c2. My opponent moved his queen, he has to move it somewhere, queen back, and now queen takes f3. And this sort of tactical exchange had positional reasoning behind it. I've removed his strong light squared bishop, and his knight is still passively placed on d7. Of course, my opponent should really take up the challenge by taking on d4 here, otherwise he's going to be in a lot of trouble. But then after bishop to e3, he's really got a lost position here. One of the lines I thought was quite amusing was queen h4 check, g3, queen takes h2 check, and now king to e1. And he has no more checks with his queen. I'm attacking his queen, and I'm threatening rook takes c6 check, leading to checkmate. So my opponent saw this variation in his time trouble, and instead he took on a4. But now, white to play and win. Quite a fairly straightforward combination here. Rook takes c6 check, pawn takes, rook takes c6 check, and now if king to b7, it's mate in 2 moves with rook b6 double check, king moves, queen b7, and if king to b8 as he played in the game, I just played bishop to f4 check, and in this position my opponent decided to resign. So I was quite happy with that game, a big confidence boost for me, winning in quite nice fashion. Okay, my opponent probably didn't play the best moves, but does show the potential with the King's Gambit. It's a very underrated opening, an opening that suits my style a lot. And well, this is another possible DVD we're going to do here, after seeing, I think it's Thomas Johansson's great book on the King's Gambit, which has inspired me to play this opening. And I know Thomas is sometimes a visitor on this site, so hopefully we'll get his comments on this game as well. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Please leave comments, and I'll try to keep you updated with more games from this competition very soon.